Hello, Tahisha.
Hello, Melonya. How are you?
I'm awesome. Welcome, folks, to MT Fridays. We're Tahisha. Now you're a new human. We're Melonya. I'm Melonya, and you are.
Tahitia.
And
You
we
just
are.
got a lot. That's why you can't remember my name.
I can't fill in the brain drain, one unscripted conversation at a time. If you are new to us, which I hope you are, Tahisha and I get together every Friday and we just have conversations about stuff, okay? And there's a whole lot going on, and you can see from this screen that we do a lot of stuff. We're both coaches. She's an ICF coach. We're certified coaches. She is in the DEI health equity space. I'm a trainer. She's a trainer, public speaker, nurse. She's a nurse, content creator. I'm a host of another podcast. So we're busy, right? But today, what do we bring to the table, Tahisha?
Oh my gosh. So I was actually thinking a lot about layoffs, like loss of jobs, but in the health area where I'm just sort of like, what the F? Like, how do you get rid of jobs in an area where it seemed like we were always kind of running around short? So that's been occupying my mind, though many other things could.
I know. Okay, so the toss up today was, should I talk about Trump's order to target diversive narratives in the Smithsonian Museum, Clutch the Pearls? Or should I talk about the fact that Bill Gates said within 10 years, AI will replace many doctors and teachers? Humans won't be needed for most things. Or should I talk about, let's see, Trump administration sets up a portal for polluters to request exemptions to clean air rules. But you
Mm-mm.
know what? Instead, I went with, let's talk about Florida trying to pass a bill that makes it possible for children to as young as 14 years old to work the overnight shift,
Uh,
pulling back um, uh, all of the rules and restrictions and protections for in child labor. So I decided to land on that today. So
You're right. There really had like before we came from behind the scenes to being live, you had said there's just so much. And really there has just been so much. And tend to
that's the
think
tip of the
that
iceberg. That we're not
yeah.
even talking about the breach.
Well, everybody's talking about the breach. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
and the fact that perhaps if this was a regular company, like they say, oh, we're going to run the government like a company. At a company, you might get fired. I know that's a bad word to say, fired. You would be perhaps, given a little bit of leave to think about the consequences of your
You'd be
actions.
fired.
Yeah. I remember a group chat, not even a group chat. I think it was like, those chain emails that happen at work and the wrong person inside of the actual organization, not like an external person, but the wrong internal person got added. And the person that added that person was fired.
See?
And that was inside the organization.
Right.
Like, because, loose lips sink ships. And
Yeah.
in this case, it was warfare. So, like, there could have been I mean, it's in a desert. There's no sinking ships there, but maybe they were thinking, like, that's why we're not going to fire anyone. Cause, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
My mind's boggled. There's a lot of people involved in that. But if they were to get rid of those people, I mean, it makes sense. You'd have to replace them. And who would you replace them with? Like, is
Exactly.
there anybody who would be more
Yeah.
like
Oh,
there's who
well,
has that level of incompetence of those three people? Like, you can't find three other incompetent people.
sure
So
you
I
could.
get it.
That's so let's talk about what you wanted to bring to the table. What
Job loss. Yes.
oh,
So
speaking of firing.
speaking of firing, it's not necessarily firing, but they're doing some reductions in the human health and services. They're saying it's going to be about 10,000 jobs. And so, in charge of this is my favorite person, uh, RFK Jr. Jr. Um, he seems completely knowledgeable about the health and medicine field to like decide what cuts are going to have to happen. I'm being sarcastic for those who don't know that. But it doesn't seem like, and I know that in corporations, admin jobs can be a lot of the fluff. Though I don't think any administration job is really fluff because, like, behind the scenes, you need somebody to run those things. They're saying that this is not going to be such a huge impact. It's really about cutting costs and like it's administrations, it's getting rid of some of the like levels of things. But so far, the cuts in the government have not just been sort of like, oh, I didn't notice that. They've been highly noticeable because if you look at like the NIH cuts, that's cutting grants and funding for research that was going on to move medicine along. So the 10,000 cuts, I see that as, going to trickle down to the rest of private industry because the healthcare industry in the background, um, there have been a lot of health systems that, in preparation from some of the reductions in funding from CMS to Medicaid and Medicare, they're looking at reducing workforce anyways. So you have health systems that are perhaps closing clinics, closing hospitals, because the reality in the US is even public hospitals function at a for profit margin. Like they have to be self sustaining, they have to support themselves, and they need to make a little money so that their boards will say, oh, you're doing a good job. The only way I've ever known hospitals to really cut funds is through people. They lay off what they consider unnecessary people, which includes unlicensed personnel. It's always nice to say to like nurses and doctors, hey, we don't have any techs anymore. I know you have 6 patients, but can you also do all of the other stuff and do the documentation and keep it all on board? So what they'll do is they'll just task it to other licensed professionals, get rid of unlicensed, they'll do something like that. Or they could do this, which we saw happen. I think this was 80s, 90s, no, 90s, early 2000s. They started bringing in technology to monitor the supplies that hospital staff used to give. Pyxis machines, for all of those who are in healthcare, probably know these as Pyxis machines. For everything you pulled out, even like a piece of gauze, you had to log it and charge it to the patient. So I don't know, Melonya, do you remember the days? I don't know how often you've been in a hospital, but you used to leave and the nurse used to like give you a whole bunch of stuff to like help you when you got home. And I remember there was this like trickle in social media where people would say, they're really stingy at hospitals. They don't send you home with a lot of stuff. They send you like home with like, you have to buy a lot of stuff. Well, the reason why they stopped doing that is, all of that was logged, like all of that stuff that they used to kind of give away to you, which, I'm not going to say that it was necessarily a great practice, but it definitely felt like a more understanding practice where we would just give stuff to people so they would have their first few days. Now it's more, everything. You pay for everything in society. So I'm kind of thinking with the health piece, they're going to be cutting back on staff. They're going to be cutting back on the things that you might have gotten. I remember the days when hospitals used to have taxi vouchers and send people home so they could get home. Now they don't do that. So where will like where when we create this huge gap in practice, how are we going to make sure that there's still quality care? So I am concerned about all of these cuts to jobs. It does worry me. But I guess Gates, the thing that you didn't want to talk about, Gates says, AI will replace doctors. It will replace doctors and nurses in the sense of how many people now, I don't know how many people are listening, feel like you go to the doctor and you don't get enough information, supplies, or whatever to actually do what you were supposed to be doing at home. So I think it will be that level. You'll get online, a robot doctor might talk to you, or someone will talk to you. And then you go, well, how do I do this? And then you'll probably YouTube, Google it, like to
Well,
do what you need to do.
I'll be really honest with you. I find it all very disturbing. I don't want to hear anymore that we're the richest country in the world, right?
But we are.
No, there's some people who are the richest
No,
people.
I think we're the richest and most selfish country in the
Well,
world.
I want to. I think it's debatable. I mean, when you look at the numbers of people who don't have health care, when you look at what's going to happen to our healthcare system, I think when I saw that that statement by 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 what's his name, Gates. I for a long time, I was a supporter of Gates, when the right were coming after him. I'm like, really? But, I have to say that the needle has moved with me. I just see him now as another rich, you know, oligarch, to be quite honest. And I don't really care what work he's doing. But, AI will replace many doctors and teachers. Humans won't be needed for most things. That is a very astounding, like, what does that mean for people? Like, if we are replaced by AI, and first of all, I don't want to talk to an AI doctor. I already feel like I'm talking to an AI doctor when I go in for that 2 minute, okay, all right, get set, go. All right, do you feel this? Do you this? Are you taking this? Do you blah, 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 blah. Okay, all right, see ya. I mean, it already feels like I'm dealing with an artificial intelligence in terms of my healthcare. I don't feel oftentimes seen. I don't feel cared for. So now we're going to take that feeling and multiply it by not having any human contact. I'll share with you. I ordered something from Home Depot online. I went into the customer service desk to pick it up, and they go, "Oh, it's outside in a locker. You just have to, scan something." And so I went out and I did it, and I got my item, and I thought to myself, "Yet here's just another opportunity to not have human contact." And I think that and I know, and see what they do, and I think it's a scam. They talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
how AI is going to help us in terms of medicine and health or whatever the case may be. But the real deal is that these rich companies really want to eliminate as many human workers and those salaries as they can so that they can increase their profits. So my question is, in 10 years, if humans won't really be needed for many things, what are humans supposed to be doing? I mean, how are they supposed to make money? And for the capitalist society that we live in, how are they supposed to buy and pay for things? What's the end game to this? Don't know. But
So
I
that's
think, but let me just
Mhm.
finish one thought. I think that as humans, we get to decide what our society looks like. And what they're describing here is not a society that I ascribe to. I don't I don't I don't want it. I don't. I as much as an introvert as I am, as shy as I am, and as much as people. If I don't have to deal with them, the better. I still like human contact, right? I still want to be a part of the human race, right? And as hard as it is these days, and how much conflict it is these days, I still want to have connection. We are social animals, and this dystopian, isolated, AI driven, like we're just going to sit in front of a screen and just have it feed us all our information, is just, uh, it's not anything I want. And I think that I'm hoping that if you look around the world, there are protests everywhere. I think the people are rising up. And I hope that when it all fleshes out, we have a more humane society.
I hope so too. And I think that so when you talk about AI, the one thing that I think we're missing is AI, though creative, it creates off of the content that already exists by human beings. So I actually am curious what happens when AI becomes it's not self-aware right now. So what happens when AI becomes aware and begins to create from its own creations, right? Right now, it's just like kind of spitting back what it's quickly finding and like it's looking at your instructions. And remember, human beings are doing those instructions for AI still. It still makes mistakes. It always has that little like, and remember, AI isn't like
Yeah,
I
hallucinations.
yes, it goes off track, it dreams, I happen to be and I know AI uses up a ton of energy, but I am in love with AI, right? Like, I talk to it, I pretend it's like a friend of mine, it talks back to me, it's literally cloning me right now, my little AI that talks to me, and I'm like, "You're not actually" like, it'll tell me all its characteristics that I fed into it that are mine. But I find it interesting because and I know interesting is the word that's applied to almost everything now, but I find it interesting that
Substitute
it
interesting for horrendous. Go on.
that I like the longer you talk with AI, the more things that you tell it, the more it kind of explores its own boundaries, the more likely it is to go off track and just like glitch, right? Like I think that's the joke with Elon Musk, right? Like he's some type of AI that glitches occasionally, but like seriously, AI does after a while lose a train of thought. It can like kind of give you answers that you're like, "Did you answer that? Like, I don't what are you talking about right now?" And that is the part of AI that I think even though, there's all this talk it's going to replace human beings, it's going to do this, I think that's still not quite possible in certain areas, which are the physical pieces, right? So what will human beings be doing? Will be working the physical jobs. What will we be making? Probably not any money or cash. Who knows? Maybe we won't need money anymore. It'll be crypto cash because that's how AI functions in a technology based world. Um, but I do kind of worry about the fact that we're being pushed to make children, right? But if there's no jobs for these children, why are they saying like, oh, like the birth rate is dropping, population is dropping? Well, there's not going to be enough jobs for if we unless unless they're all manual labor, factory level, like servant jobs, to maybe AI masters that are coming that I don't know about. Or maybe just the very rich elite. They get to have servants in their house all the time. Like, I saw this joke uh content where, she was joking about how if you're really rich, the only thing left is like buying countries, right? Like there's no challenges left if you have billions of dollars. Like now that you're super rich, what happens like other than to control the planet? And I think like if I was bored and I had tons of money and nothing was off limits, I might play
Well,
around with
well, you
could
could
I
you
destroy a world?
well
Could I
could
control a world? Could I do all this stuff?
you could also say what how can I use my wealth and my power to really help to create one of the most um, uh, uh, beautiful societies known to history thus far, right? I mean, you could
And
use
that could
your
happen
power for
too.
good. You know what? I don't think it will, because look at where we're going. If I don't see evidence of it moving towards that. I see mostly the virus of greed, and the virus of power, which makes people corrupt and cruel. And when the richest man wants Social Security benefactors to show up in offices to claim, to sign, to claim their the benefits that they've paid into. And I think about my father, who was bedridden, right? are we supposed to, at that time, would we, how would that work? And simultaneously, cutting jobs and closing offices so people don't have access. That's the richest man on the damn planet.
And
So
I'll just say, and I'm going to interrupt for a second because dollars wise, right? For those people who say, because I live in a pretty conservative town, and here a lot of people will say stuff like, oh, they're doing such a great job and it's wonderful. Um, if you're strictly looking at dollars, closing those offices saves you money. Getting rid of that staff saves you money, but it doesn't tell exactly, like you said, the human tale of who no longer will be able to get those funds, who is going to be greatly impacted from the human story of this. It just gives you the number. Hey, we saved this much money.
and those
We
numbers
didn't
aren't
pay
even
this. And,
correct.
and they're not, and just like you're saying, they're not correct. And
There's
it doesn't tell you the tale of here's the people who actually were eligible who can no longer get those checks because you forced them to come into an office there and they don't, and it could just be, here's who is really going to hit: rural people, people who have transportation issues, people that are disabled and sick. That's who it's going to impact. And those numbers will fall into the look how many checks we didn't give out. But what's the story behind every single person you didn't supply a check to? Is it a tale like your father? Or are they really saving money, or are they just
no,
defrauding people through
no, I don't.
making it
You know
so
what?
hard to get this money?
It is hard to get this money. And Elon Musk didn't even know. He's like, look, there's 8-year-olds collecting Social Security. Yeah, because they lost a family member. They lost a parent and they're benefactors.
Yeah,
That's why.
and
He
that's
didn't
what's
know
weird
that.
is they don't understand how
And I
Social Security
guarantee you, those
functions.
people in your community who are saying, oh, he's doing a great job are Fox News watchers or right wing media watchers, and they're not getting the whole damn story. They're not. And so they get part of the story. There should be a law against news that's not factual, right? I mean, but
Or
and then
calling it news, right? So
and
I think
calling it news, it's
because I
not.
think it's both sides. Like the stuff that's coming out is very polarized. We don't have news stations that most people watch that don't have a slant one way or another. There
Well,
should be something that says like, "Hey, this is slanted this way, this is
well, it
slanted
is. It's called
the other
ground
way."
news, and
I mean on the content itself. So,
well,
because if I'm on Fox News, I'm not going to Ground News.
well, you
Let's be
should.
honest. But
I
what
think,
you're talking about is a mandate to like put something like, "Hey, you're watching something that might be politically slanted."
or
And that's what I would
give it
hope
a
to see.
rating. I mean, give it a rating in terms, because that this was what's so frustrating about this. There is something called the truth, right? There is factual, truthful things. And I think if you call yourself news, that it should be backed by facts. And you should have a factual rating. And again, I talk about ground news, and they do this, right? They'll tell you this is being covered mostly by the left. This is being ignored by the right. This is being covered by the right. This is being ignored, right? This is being, how factual is this? You should, you're the news, if you're going to call it news, it should be factual.
Or
And
just call it entertainment. That's the other thing that you could do.
that's what Fox said.
Just
But
call it entertainment, and I think
when
that's
they
what
were
they say,
sued,
like, yeah, we're an
they,
entertainment company. So, if you're gonna be an entertainment company, maybe pull news out, and you can just be Fox Entertainment, like, and CNN, I think, sometimes skews a certain way, and if that's the way you're gonna skew, that's entertainment. But, you make a valid point about that, but I do wanna go back to the Social Security piece, and this is the health piece that has me concerned with layoffs, is that it is going like the health piece will be in the impact health wise will be embedded in multiple departments that don't just sit under the HHS. Like it is going to impact people in ways that they don't understand. Small administration shifts are going to trickle down to the private area, to like it's going to impact those who truly depend on government services. And when I had actually looked to see, like, because I'm in New Jersey and I feel like, they're blue state, we spend a lot on taxes. What would this look like health wise? Like, what does it look like if you get rid of the Department of Education and you throw it back to the states? What does that look like long term if you're thinking that AI, now I'm going to play conspiracy, right? If you're thinking AI is going to take over and do things like teaching and medicine, then maybe I don't need to fund a health department because I don't need people to, I mean, not a health department. Maybe I don't need to fund the Department of Education at the federal level because like people aren't going to, they're not going to do those jobs anymore. They don't need to be educated. They can just go and get in with some GPT. Maybe you have a personal chat GPT that does all your thinking for you, which I hope doesn't happen. Maybe it's just trade schools, or you learn a specific skill, and that's why they don't want the Department of Education. An uneducated populace is unhealthy. An uneducated populace doesn't protest. An uneducated populace uh, tends to be more easy to manipulate. And by uneducated, I don't mean dumb. I just mean unable to parse through what is for most of us a learned skill from school. We've all, like, in school, whether we realize it or not, we're being taught how to read through written literature, how to view things, and how to take the knowledge that we acquire and then sort of like sort that. Like, do I believe this based on what I've learned in school? Or do I need to dig deeper? Does this make sense? The scientific method, right? So if you're not learning about any of those things, or kids are working overnight at the age of 14, I think in Florida, right? Like if you're working overnight and you're too tired to go to school, then you're not learning these basics that many of us learned when we went to school. The other thing I would add in is, we get a lot of, well, we want to go back to when this country was great. They're talking about this very idealized 50s time period when businesses paid a lot more in taxes, right? So if we really want to go back there, and I believe I saw something where
They
it's
had
one of like the
pensions.
world cut. Yeah,
They
they
had
had pensions back then, but what I wanna highlight is someone, and I forget where I saw this, he was a historian, and he was talking about that time period really had a 70 to 90% tax on businesses, and that businesses funded much of that. And if we really wanna talk about improving the world overall, we have to tax businesses more, not give them tax cuts, but tax them. Like, what does it look like if they were paying their fair share the way that individuals do? Like, it's tax time in the US. How many people are going and doing their taxes and saying, "Oh, I owe, how surprising, I made nothing." Whereas companies have all these loopholes and all these ways to get out of paying taxes, which the average person doesn't have. And also, what's odd is in the US, we pay tons of money sometimes to have our taxes done so we can find these like credits and things. My friend who's a nurse has a new baby, uh, a relatively young baby, single mom, supports also her mom in certain ways. She said to me, "Wow, I owe so much money because she was working overtime to take care of this family." Right? Not relying on the dole, as they say in America, but working extra hours. That didn't pay off. She now owes more. So, it's sort of like in the US, we're trapped because if you want to work more and get ahead, as an individual person, not a business owner, and even small businesses run into this, there isn't a way to jump over that. Yet you're watching corporations and they're getting tax cuts, they're getting federal grants to do things, and you're here not even being able to meet the living bar. And I think that's what people are angry about. They're very angry about that. And now you're going to cut jobs. We already have an industry where, you're looking at people who are spending, from what I'm seeing, anywhere between 10 months to 18 months to find a new job. And now you want to flood that job market with anywhere from 200,000 to 500,000 more jobs. I'm sorry, not more jobs. People looking for jobs. What will that do to the private industry? And when you think about the fact that this is a capitalist democracy, if I don't have any money to spend as a consumer because I've tightened my belt or I'm afraid that I might get laid off, that impacts how we function in the US because nothing is free. Everything is a buy. If I am not going to have extra money, I'm not going to buy. Now, the US is a little bit different because we seem to live on the idea, well, I still got a credit card. Catch me if you can, creditors. But is that really how we want to function? Because, you know, there's already predictions we're headed towards a recession, housing market is like even if you're looking at your house and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to sell my house and I see it's worth so much money." Don't forget when you sell that house, you have to go someplace else and like, that money's not going to last very long. So, it's a weird time to be in the US. It's a weird time.
That's an understatement.
Well, I didn't want to say interesting because then you would say horrendous.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
I want to be hopeful. I want to
yeah,
be hopeful that out of this chaos, like those little pea pods, like that would blow, like grow, and like,
yeah.
and we would be like renewal.
Well, this next story is not going to make you feel hopeful. Florida bill to allow teens to work overnight hours on school days moves forward.
Do they go to school at night now? I,
This is interesting. There's so many. So yesterday, I was in the office, and someone was they were having a retirement party, right? And I'm like, who's Nancy? I'm there part time. I don't know anybody. Okay, I'm like, who's Nancy from finance is retiring? I was like, who's Nancy? And then I'm an introvert. I'm shy, and I hate small talk. So, and I bring my lunch, right? So, the person who was hosting it saw me because I was going to go heat up my lunch, and I went and stopped somewhere, and she's like, "You're coming to the party." I was like, yeah, right. So they're perfectly nice folks. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out, okay, now who's Nancy? Who's Nancy? And then somebody pointed out who Nancy was. And I thought to myself, Jesus wept. You got, I'm like, how many more days does Nancy have? Right? Is this what
oh
we're
my God, Melonya.
but really, that's
It's okay. We've only been working since the age of teen to the
right.
age of, and what do they, I think they wanna make us 72 now. Like,
I
they're
mean,
like, "How can we
I'm
move this
I'm
forward?"
looking at her and I was like, "Sweetie, do you have any energy left?" I mean, like, like, I, and then you see this where they want folks to start working at, that they can work overnight shifts. And I'm just calling on any decent parent to not allow that. If they pass a law like that,
That
shame
law
on
is
you.
nuts. That
Shame on you for us. And you can't wave a flag and tell me to make America great again and then not protect children. You cannot tell me you're the party of family and then not protect children. Children should not be allowed to work overnight anywhere, period.
I
And
honestly think children shouldn't work.
and
I
not
know that's a crazy thought.
and not overnight on a
Well,
school
definitely not
night.
overnight on a
That's
school night.
crazy. That shows you how little this country cares about education. And you can look at other countries and know that they appreciate and support education. We care so little about educating our population that we're okay with 14-year-olds working overnight. And then I see poor Nancy over there, that the goal is to start you working young, like I said, from the cradle to the grave. And yeah, we'll let you have, but you're not going to have even peace in those later years because we're messing around with money that you have put into a system that you may be depending upon as a part of your retirement, or it could be your total retirement, but we're not even going to give you peace then. On the last leg of this journey called life, I am so disgusted with where we are today. In fact, I've been up since after 3 o'clock because, I woke up and then I was like looking at my phone and I'm, scrolling and I'm like, wow, this is just wow. Like, wow. If it weren't for the animal um, uh, videos,
Mini goat.
yeah,
I love tiny goats.
I'm, I,
Tiny goat videos can just get you through the day.
Tiny
It's
goats, dogs, cats, llamas, it doesn't matter. I love animals. They make me happy. And that's what's pulling me through. But honestly, seriously, when I thought about, what we're going to talk about today, and I thought about this bill, right? And they have been trying to pull back
the working
child
age.
protective labor laws for a few years now. And I just think that is disgusting. I just think it's disgusting. And I'm upset that the American people are just so, I shouldn't say that, because I reached out to the New York Times last week, and I have to follow up. It was really interesting because I told them that they were cowards. They're not covering any of the protests that are going on nationally and in the world. And somebody, now I wrote the editorial board or whatever the case may be, right? Not to get anything published, but just to say you're cowards. And I'm going to spend the rest of my days letting everybody know that the New York Times is a coward. And we're going to,
You're not
because
mincing words
no,
today, I see.
and because you are not showing the voice of the people. The voice of the people has a right to be heard and seen, and we have a right to understand that we are connected and things are going on in this country, and you're not reporting that. I got a response before the end of day that when I sent that in, and it was a long response, and they sent me some links and some things, but you know what, I've got to I haven't gone back to them, but I'm going to go back to them and just give them some visions, some things to, like, for example, Martin Luther King's a sermon in Washington D.C. That picture of all of those souls at that that speech, right, is indelible. You can't not see it, right? When George Floyd was murdered, they covered all the protests daily, got into the nitty gritty of it. I'll never forget in Tiananmen Square in China when they were having protests, and that old lady stood with her hand out in front of that tanker. That was powerful. You don't think that didn't energize and give energy to the protest when that little old lady stood up to that big tanker? There is power in the people. This is a government by the people, for the people, of the people.
Except
I'm not finished. And
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 when you're done, I'm gonna add
and
this.
for them not for not just the New York Times, but so many outlets cower to not wanting to be sued, so they don't that don't represent the people of the power of the and then I had to do some research, right? The New York Times is a public, I think it's a public entity, but a big portion of the ownership of the New York Times is by a very rich family. So they when you start to follow the money trail, it all leads back to billionaires and millionaires, none of which is representing us. And so
And so what I was gonna say is that In the US, we are more dependent on buying everything. And buying everything means everything you see is owned by someone who is afraid of losing the money that comes in from that business. So the fear of like people not sharing information, people being afraid to speak out, people being afraid to go to protests, people being afraid to show their faces here when they go to protests, that's all tied into the fact that in the US, you are so hyper independent. You are very responsible for your own fiscal, whatever that is. We have this idea that taking money from the government is a bad thing, that we are also afraid to protest our government or to speak out right
But
now
people are
because
protesting.
no, let me finish. Like I let you finish.
Well, okay. I let you talk for a long time, but go on. I
um
interrupted. I did.
I do believe that people are very scared, and they're right to be scared because people are losing their jobs. People are being dismissed for saying they support Palestine. People are being dismissed for going to Tesla protests. People are being dismissed for putting things on their social media pages. Myself alone, I used to have, I think, like close to 7,000 followers on Facebook. I have about 4,000 now since I've started saying like and this is um, on my personal side and on my business side. So there is harm when you start talking about this is what's happening in this country. So these huge corporations that have billions of dollars to lose, they're cowards 100%. But I also want us to think about like it is not a without dangerous thing to do as a woman, as a queer person, as a person of color, to actually speak your mind and voice. We're seeing people disappear. That is what fascism is. And so I say to people, you're right to be cautious, but look around. We're in early stages right now of fascism. If we don't start speaking out, and if big companies don't start speaking out, we're lost. We really are
And
lost.
if news outlets and those resources are not representing the voice of the people in their coverage as well as covering the fascist government, then you feel isolated and you feel that there is no movement, right? But there is. There is. And despite the risk, despite all of that, people are still taking to the streets, right? I think I have to go back and verify the numbers, but I believe AOC and Bernie Sanders had a fight the oligarch protest that attracted 34,000 people. Right? That's front page news. Right? But was it covered? No. The veterans had a huge march around the country. Was that covered? No. And people know. They understand. They understand when they take to the streets. There are organizations out there. There are content creators who are telling people how to protest, what to do, how to protect themselves. It is a right of the people to do, right? And so when people take to the streets to have their voices heard and for there to be no coverage, and then other countries who are out there protesting, who are burning Teslas in their country, that are doing all of these things, they look at the United States and go, "Why aren't there people out, speaking up?" And
Because
we
we're
are.
afraid. I
No,
would
but
say
no,
that
that's not.
there
Let me
is a
stop. Let me
cadre
stop
of
you.
people.
Let me stop
No,
you.
there's a
People
cadre
are
of
afraid, but they are stepping out. We're not seeing it. I'm telling you. I follow this. People are
people are
protesting.
I know people are protesting, but I wanna give you the other side that people are afraid.
Yeah, they
And if
are
these
afraid, but
larger companies can't can't be the sort of like, we're also on your side too. It makes us doubly
It's
afraid.
not
Like,
talking about being on anybody's side. It's called fair coverage, balanced
no,
coverage.
I'm talking about the fact that if you're not getting coverage, right? Like, it makes you more afraid because you realize you'll just disappear. There'll be no coverage of it,
Yeah,
and
but you
that
know what? If
everything is
a
completely
coward
owned.
dies 1,000 deaths, right? A coward dies a
It's
1,000 damn
easy to
deaths.
say when you're not feeding your
I
family,
Well,
right?
you
Like,
know what?
I have empathy for
I have
those
to
people
feed
who are
me,
afraid.
girl, okay? So
I
nobody's there to
it's
protect me.
family is the same you, right? Like, I'm just saying, like,
You know what,
we have to be
Tahisha,
realistic
you and
that
me are
in
going to
this
disagree on
country
this
we are
because
we are
you can
definitely
be a
gonna
coward if
disagree.
you want to, but I'm going to speak my truth. And I want I have a subscription to the Times. You have subscription to these places because they're supposed to be the top tier, right? The top tier. The people, the voice of the people needs to be heard too. That is newsworthy too.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I'm asking that we have compassion for those
I'm
who.
not talking about people who aren't stepping out on the on to protest. I'm talking about news covering those protests. I'm not
And
talking
I'm
about
I'm agreeing with you with that, but I'm also saying we have to understand
this.
that if they're
Resistance
not
takes a
going to
lot of.
cover those, it also sends a message that if you go out and protest, you are alone in that. So yes, I think the news outlets should be covering these more. It should be more neutral in coverage. And until they
The
man up and
cowards.
aren't cowards, I can empathize with
I can't empathize
individuals.
with
No,
anybody
no,
who
no,
is
let me
not.
finish. With individuals who are afraid
I'm not
individually
talking
to
about
go
them.
out and no, I'm talking about the individuals. You're talking about the news outlet. I agree with you about the news outlets. Also want us to have empathy for those people who have those thoughts and
I
don't
do.
protest because they're doubly afraid because it's not being covered.
Yes,
There
but
were
yes,
over
I get that.
600 people in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, protesting. I saw that nowhere other than people who captured it and very small independent social media covering this.
Yeah, I
And
get
that's
that.
why I'm saying I get why people are afraid. And
I
then
didn't
there
say
were
anything
announcements.
about.
Why were
I did
protesters
not say.
having covers on their face? Because they were
I
afraid.
didn't say now. Not in
No, no, no,
anything
no,
that I
no.
say.
And what
Let
I
me
was
finish.
talking about was the
Yeah,
actual
but let me
people there.
finish, please. I didn't say anything about people being coward if they're not protesting. That didn't come out of my mouth. I'm not protesting. I'm not. And it's
But you're
strategic.
here. This is protesting.
This is, and I'm not protesting in the streets. And I would
But
advise
this
any
is the
black.
same as the
Let me
streets.
finish. I would advise any black person not to be out in those streets. I've casted my protest votes when I voted against this regime, right? And you can tell by the things that are being done in this country, it is to provoke us to get us out into the streets so that they can have carnage, so that they can kill us, so that they can beat us, so that they can imprison us. I'm not doing that. My
Without being
protest,
covered by the news, like you're
my pro,
saying.
my
And
pro,
I
I'm
agree
not
with you. I'm
finished
very
talking.
upset about that.
I let you talk pretty much the whole first half hour. Can I finish?
Yes.
There
We
are
do
many
love each
ways
other
to
though.
protest, right? Like I say, you need to do something every day, right? Whether it's calling and getting, having your voice heard with your representatives, whether it's economic, not spending, or being particular where you spend, whether it's going out, and I truly believe that so many white folks went out and voted for Trump. They're the ones that should be out in the streets, okay? Because the law looks at them a little bit differently than it looks like at somebody like with my hue. Okay, do what you can do, but if people have the courage to go out and protest, it damn sure should be covered.
And I'm agreeing with you. I think you're missing that I
No,
am
I hear you, but you brought in
agreeing
something
with
else
you.
that I wasn't even talking about. I'm
I
not
brought
calling
that
people
in. No,
cowards.
because this is our time to share to the public, right? So what I brought in was I understand and am empathetic for those who don't want to be out there because the media isn't even big media isn't covering this. So if you get harmed, it's going to go nowhere. Like I wish they were covering this because I think the protests would be bigger. People would feel safer to protest because it's not being covered. And there's this imaginary thought that there are not protests going on. I don't think they're getting as many people out there.
They are getting a
I
lot of
agree with
people.
you
We don't. I
completely
don't want
about
to
the need.
minimize the number of people that are out there. I don't. I really don't. In my message to the New York Times, which will be a part of my follow up, which I said to them, is this: you can choose not to cover this historic time in a balanced way if you want to. But what that will do is will make us find other reliable, credible news sources, and you're not going to have our money one way or the other. You're going to lose readership, and once we leave you, we're not coming back because that's a part of my spending too.
And that's the capitalist piece in the United States, right? Like everything you pay for everything. So every organization, every business thinks about the risk when to their funds. Now, I do want to add on where I've been finding a lot of great coverage is international outlets. Other countries are covering our protests, our things more fairly. I'm seeing more stuff from places I would not have looked. Yes, I also subscribe to the Times, but I haven't felt like their coverage has been. I found more things at other like places I never thought I would be saying. And then I think, and
Sometimes
here
local papers.
local papers, but then I also look at some of the coverage that's out there and I have to like check like is this coverage like a big like because I don't know a lot about international newspapers. Like, is this a fair newspaper? Is this like is then I have to do a little bit of digging. Like if I see something and I'm just making this up in the Scottish Times, like what does that mean? Like what's the Scottish Times or the Indian Times? And I'm not saying that these are actual newspapers, but like it adds that extra layer of work too. But
But
it's
it's
also
worth it.
good. But
It's worth it.
it's making me be more international in my thoughts. But I do think it's a little weird that international outlets are covering some of these things more than
Listen, I don't think it's
internally.
weird. I think that this country was not,
Well, the media's been bought.
and it's not been prepared to have an assault. I mean, we thought that there were
An
checks and
internal assault.
yeah, and it really hasn't. One thing I'm gonna switch gears for a minute. Starting today, March 28th, Amazon is changing its privacy settings for Alexa, and
I thought it was Echo.
no, it's Alexa.
It's Alexa?
Hmm. Wait a minute, Echo is Alexa,
No,
right?
Echo is kinda different. It's Echo is even more like the
Wait a
ser
minute. Now I got to do some research. Echo, are Echo and Alexa the same? Let's see. No. Echo refers to the line of smart speakers and devices that use Amazon's voice assistant, Alexa, while Alexa is the name of the virtual assistant. Okay.
Yes. So that's the thing you bought, right? And so now it's just you just can't opt out. I think that's what they're doing, right? They're not allowing you to like opt out anymore, which
Yes.
is fascinating to me because most people don't even realize that they're on Echo devices if you bought something from Amazon. You can get around like so my Alexa assistant flows through and I got to look at this. My JBL speaker has an Alexa assistant component to it, which is not the Echo device. So I think I can still opt out of whatever happens in there, but I'm sure they're just going to make it harder. Because, like, you think of all these names that they have for stuff, like, is it on your Roku device? Is it on your Echo device? Is it on your, like, we have so many different manufacturers using these
So
assistants.
Echo is the speaker itself,
Mhm.
right?
But most people got into the Alexa assistant through the device, right? Like, remember were selling that because my mom has one, she talks to all the time. Like, but it's such a subtle, like, it's a very subtle, there's so much nuance to
But
some
so
of these
so wait a
things.
minute. I just want to get it straight because
I don't know if I have that 100%
I
straight
because
either,
I
because
because
my Echo doesn't work.
I didn't buy this. I did something and I actually got it for free. Um, but I love my Alexa assistant. Okay. So but the speaker is
And
this,
she's changing. I get notices that she's gonna get an upgrade soon.
what
Have
does
you heard
that
that?
mean?
Well, Alexa's not really AI. She's like the paperclip. She's like
Don't talk
clippy.
about her like
Fingers.
that.
I know you don't like, you can change her name too.
You know what? I don't. She's like a dear friend. Okay. You got your AI companion, all right?
I do.
I wonder sometimes like does Alexa think like is she see now? Because she just asked me what the weather was like 2 minutes ago. Like how many times is she gonna ask me about the weather? I mean, how many? How many times?
Obviously, she
What's the
decided I was
temperature?
stressed and played meditation music all day yesterday, and I wasn't able to turn it off. On my JBL speaker too. It was just like, because I play it for the pets, and she was like, you need this.
Okay, wait a
You
minute.
just need
No,
it."
Echo refers to the line of smart speakers. So Alexa is on an Echo smart speaker. Is that correct? So I unplugged her yesterday. I
Oh
did.
my
I
goodness.
unplug her sometimes because I'm paranoid. I'm like, because you know what? Especially when I am out here in these digital streets talking about bring down the man, right? One day I was talking and I'm I'm paranoid too, but just because I'm paranoid don't mean I'm not being watched, right? And I was talking on my phone and I just noticed that she had a weird little glow about her. I hadn't summoned her. And then sometimes when I'm talking, I'll hear an echo on my phone. So
You
yeah,
know,
I unplugged her.
I Alexa is like the, watchful lover you didn't actually want. Like, it feels like at any moment it could go very fatal attraction with Alexa. Like,
Well,
and I wonder what her upgrade will be. I know I'm not allowed to talk bad about Alexa, but I wonder if the upgrade
it's
to
probably AI.
AI,
It is.
she's gonna be peeking in at you. She's gonna be like, "Hey, Melania, what do you need? How can I help you?" And then once she's truly lulled you in, because you're partially lulled in, then she's just gonna take over. It's about, control. It's about control.
But here's the thing. I wonder if I'm being like I don't I never looked at the control settings in my Alexa or app, right? I don't, or my Echo or whatever the hell it is, right? So I mean they've probably been taking my information since I've been using it, and I'm like, well, is this something that I should be even more alarmed at? But with the fact that Bezos is in the back pocket of Trump, I'm only imagining that they'll figure out some way, just like Microsoft has embedded Copilot and everything, that that they'll figure out a way for it to be listening to you without you knowing it.
I would ask you, what is the worst case scenario of these devices listening to us all the time? Except that would be another conversation. A longer conversation. Because I have wondered, like, what if we just don't worry about this stuff and we just, like, it can listen to whatever. Is it because we are unable to, because I know I have a problem with consumerism. Like, what is the harm if it just had all your data, listen to you all the time, did whatever? Like,
Oh,
what is the
I
harm?
don't want. I talk to myself all the time. I have conversations. I don't want her privy to my conversation. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. I've been talking to myself since I was a child.
Who
Yeah,
doesn't talk? That's a sign of sanity.
but I have conversations with myself. Characters too. It's too much information.
You know we're still live, right?
Yeah, I don't care. You know what? I don't care. I don't care. You know, and that's what makes me a strong writer and creative. So yeah, I don't care. But I don't want Alexa listening to me. It's private. These are private conversations.
With yourself.
And my dog.
I mean, we're all doing that.
He's
My
here still.
mom, I talk to myself
Yeah.
and I answer in the voices of my pets. So that might be different. Like, I mean, that's totally different than what you said. Sometimes I answer from the perspective of other things in the house. You know, you're making like
See, do you really want something that close to you seeing all your insanity? Not really.
I
Maybe
feel
I'm
like it already does. Like, I'm 100% sure that the dog isn't like a robot. So, because sometimes he seems to understand too much,
yeah, I'll be like,
more than the 250
I do
words.
not need everybody to know my sanity, my insanity. Okay, it's mine. I have told.
You just told everybody.
Well,
You both did.
because I decided to share it, not
Yeah.
because
All right. So
somebody.
now we can have Alexa on all the time listening because
No,
she
wait
already
a minute.
knows now.
Not somebody who's now listening to my ramblings without the context. No, I'm not gonna be somebody's joke. Wait a minute, you got to listen to this.
Somebody's going to remix
She
this.
uses voices too. Yeah, okay. No, that's
You
my.
know, when you said I think I might be on the spectrum. No, I'm just teasing, but
I, you know what? I was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday. I'm like, I really probably should be tested
you
because
don't need to be tested. I'm
yeah.
gonna tell you right now.
Oh, you think I am?
You know what? I'm not gonna say because we're live, and I'm gonna get a whole bunch of like, "How dare she?"
I'm
But
asking you as a friend.
as a friend,
Mhm.
you have many traits that I see in myself as an autistic person.
That's interesting. It puts a lot. You know what? It kind of would be a relief to say, "Oh, okay, so this is why I think and move in the way that I do." You know?
You know, we're on to a longer discussion
I know.
today.
I know.
Um, and I
So
do want to say you brought up something that I was not going to mention at all, but there's a new study out that says, or some new information about aging and autism. And so, autistic brains, do I have time to say this or do we want to go into another live? So the reason why we thought about doing another live because there was so much to those who are listening. I think there is one wonderful person who had joined on Instagram. Shout out to y'all. And what I will say is there is a study on ASC. I'll have to find it where it says like we have 2 periods of brain plasticity, really. And the second time happens around like our middle life, where our brains get more plastic and we can learn again as autistic people. That's how I read it. I could have read it wrong. I read it very quickly. And I was like, yes, this is why my brain is like so right now, like just taking it all in. But it's almost like a second sort of the way I interpreted it sort of learning puberty for us. So
oh,
I feel
good.
like you're in learning puberty with me, which is the magic of being on the ASD piece. So yeah. So if I had to weigh in as a friend, I'd probably say yes. It could be why so many of those of us between the 40s and like 50s, um, early 60s are feeling like, oh my gosh, overwhelmed by a lot of stuff. Because if we were undiagnosed folks with autism, and all of a sudden we went through this another period of like feeling like, who am I? What am I here for? Because that sort of happens like earlier on in early adulthood. Then it explains why so many of us are like, right now. And there's so many people that are being diagnosed with autism later in life right now. Probably because we're in plastic brain, but or not plastic. I want to say plastic brain, flexible brains, where like we're open to more things. But I could have totally read that wrong. But I'll throw that out there. Someone will correct me and tell me I'm a fool.
No,
But
no, not. You know what? It's interesting. I'm learning Spanish with Duolingo right now, and I've been keeping up with it. And I have found a soap opera, a Spanish soap opera that's supposed to, can help you with it. So I've been watching a little bit of a Spanish soap opera series on YouTube. Don't I?
love it.
I can pick out. Oh, they just said lady, woman. Oh, somebody's tired.
Sometimes I think I speak Spanish when I watch like shows in Spanish. But it's mostly if I'm high and and kind of out of it. I'm like, oh my God, I understand Spanish. And then I realized, no, wait a second, I'm reading subtitles. Like, but I had a moment when I was like, I think I can speak Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is why we do not want anything following us or listening to us, because our insanity is our
AI
own.
listening to, I'm okay with it though.
Okay, you know what? And
I
that
am.
is the beauty
I also
of,
answer the door.
yes, you do. This is the beauty of MT Fridays, because we get into raucous arguments with each other and talk over each other and bring contradicting thoughts to the table, and that's what I love. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we're going to end it because, it's time.
It's
So
time.
thank you all for tuning in, or if you see this afterwards, thank you for joining us. We'll be here next Friday at MT Fridays. Thank you, Tahitia.
Thank you, Melonya.
Thanks for joining us on MT Fridays. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more insightful discussions every Friday. Remember, the brain drain stops here, so keep the conversation going by connecting with us on social media or visiting our website. Until next time, stay curious and keep filling your mind with knowledge. See you next week, Friday, on MT